예, 반갑습니다. 챕터 3가 생각보다 너무 짧네요. 너무 짧게 끝나왔고 두 번 만에 정리가 되고 서머리를 보게 되네요. 하여간 어떻게 보면 본격적인 얘기의 시작이죠. 드디어 개츠비 오빠가 나타났어요. 오케이, 서머리를 어떻게 해볼 수 있나 한번 스파크 노트에서 서머리 해놓은 거부터 먼저 좀 봅시다. One of the reasons that Gatsby has become so famous around New York is that there is an elaborate parties every weekend at his mansion. 위켄드라고 나왔나? 맨날 한다고 하지 않았나? 써먹을 만한 방법이죠. 써먹을 만한 표현이죠. throw party, 파티를 연다를 throw party라 그러죠. Lavish spectacles to his people long to be invited. long이 여기서는 뭐 기대하다, 원하다 뭐 이런 뜻으로 쓴 것 같고요. One day, Gatsby's chauffeur brings Nick an invitation to one of these parties. At the appointed time, Nick makes the short walk to Gatsby's house. 이 오빠도 표현 재밌게 하네. short walk죠. 바로 옆집이니까. And joins the festivities, feeling somewhat out of place. 뻘쭘하죠. Amid the throng of jubilant strangers. Guests mill around. 재밌는 표현. mill around. 막 돌아다니는 거죠. Exchange rumors about their host. No one seems to know the truth about Gatsby's wealth or personal history. 그냥 speculation만 abound 하는 거죠. speculation만 잔뜩 있는 거죠. Nick runs into Jordan Baker, whose friend Lucille speculates that Gatsby was a German spy during the war. 그랬나? 루실이 그랬네. German spy 같다. Nick also hears that Gatsby is a graduate of Oxford man, and that he once killed a man in cold blood. 이런 표현은 안 나왔던 것 같은데. 그러니까 사람 죽였다는. Gatsby's party is almost unbelievably luxurious. 굉장히 화려했다. 아니 luxurious가 호화판이었다. Guests marvel over his Rolls Royce. Rolls Royce라는 표현이 있었나? 미치겠네. His swimming pool, his beach, crates of fresh oranges and lemons, buffet tents, in the gardens overflowing with a feast, and a live orchestra playing under the stars. Liquor flows freely, and the crowd grows rowdier, 점점 시끄러워지고, and louder, and more guests get drunk. In this atmosphere of opulence and revelry, Nick and Jordan, curious about their host, set out to find Gatsby. 찾아보자. 가 아니었잖아. 조던을 불렀잖아요. 아닌가? Instead, they run into middle-aged. 맞다. 처음엔 찾으러 갔구나. Middle-aged man with huge owl-eyed spectacle, whom Nick dubs Owl Eyes, who sits poring over the unread books in Gatsby's library. unread라고 표현이 나왔나요? 뭐 갖고 unread라고 썼을까? 그냥 진짜 책이라고 하지 않았나? 뭘 또 놓치고 있는 거지 나는? At midnight, Nick and Jordan go outside to watch the entertainment. They sit at a table with a handsome young man who says that Nick looks familiar to him. 왜? They realized that they served in the same. 이게 개츠비죠? 닉을 어디서 본 것 같다는 사람. They realized that they served in the same division during the war. The man introduced himself as none other than J. Gatsby. 그렇죠. Gatsby's speech is elaborate and formal, and he has a habit of calling everyone all sport. 친구, 뭐 이 정도 표현이죠. As the party progresses, Nick becomes increasingly fascinated with Gatsby. He noticed that Gatsby does not drink, 술 안 마시고, and that he keeps himself separate from the party, standing alone in the marble steps, watching his guests in silence. At 2 o'clock in the morning, as husbands and wives argue over whether to leave, a butler tells Jordan that Gatsby would like to see her. 나중에 밝혀지죠? 게스비가 조단을 통해서 데이지를 만나보려고 했던 것 같죠. 희미하게 그 기억이 나는 것 같아요. 그러니까 보시면 아시겠지만 저도 스토리 잘 기억 안 나요. 근데 이거는 기억나는 것 같아. 나중에 조단을 통해서 데이지를 보려고 했던 것 같아요. Jordan emerges from her meeting with Gatsby saying that she has just heard something extraordinary. 이때 처음으로 조던도 데이지와 개츠비의 관계를 처음 들었던 것 같기도 하다. Nick says goodbye to Gatsby, who goes inside to take a phone call from Philadelphia. Nick starts to walk home. On his way, he sees Our Eyes struggling to get his car out of the ditch. Our Eyes and another man climb out of the wrecked automobile, and Our Eyes drunkenly declares that he washes his hands of the whole business. 응? 그런 표현이 있었나? 나만 못 알아먹고 있는겨? 당신들은 다 알고 있는 거예요. 환장하다 이거. 자꾸 놓치고 있는 것 같아. 보다 보면. Nick then proceeds to describe his everyday life to prove that he does more with his time than simply attend parties. 그죠? 자기가 평소에 무슨 일 하는지. He works in New York City, through which he also takes long walks and meets women. 이렇게 저렇게 썸도 타고. After a brief relationship with a girl from Jersey City, Nick follows the advice of Daisy and Tom and begins seeing Jordan Baker. 이것 때문에 이렇게 했다는 얘기는 안 나왔던 것 같은데 그냥 본 거 아니에요? Nick says that Jordan is fundamentally a dishonest person. He knows that she cheated in her first golf tournament. 이런 얘기는 나오죠. Nick feels attracted to her despite her dishonesty, even though he himself claims to be one of the few honest people he ever known. He has ever known. 자기는 정직함이 최고의 자기 성격의 특징이다. 이렇게 얘기를 하죠. 좀 동의 안 되는 부분들도 있다. 서머리가. 그죠? Analysis. At the beginning of this chapter, Gatsby's party brings 1920s wealth and glamour into full focus. 흥청망청하던 저번에 그랬잖아요. Roaring Twenties,라고 정말 미국이 잘 나가던 때. Showing the upper class at its most lavishly opulent. The rich, both socialites from East Egg and their coarse counterparts from West Egg. 그러니까 뭐 old money, new money 그렇게 흔히 얘기하죠. Cavort without restraint. Cavort가 뭔 뜻이야? 하여간 뭐 흥청망청 그냥 노는 거죠. As its depiction of the differences between East Egg and West Egg shows, Fitzgerald is fascinated with the social hierarchy and mood of America in the 1920s. And a large group of industrialists, speculators, and businessmen with brand new fortunes joined the old aristocratic families at the top of the economic ladder. New money, old money. 그 얘기죠. The new rich lacked the refinement, manners, and taste of the old rich, but longed to break into the polite society of the East Eggers. 그러니까 그죠? 졸부들이니까. 근데 그래봐야 뭐 전통적인 부자라 그래도 미국이 뭐 역사가 뭐 얼마 안 되는 나라 아닙니까? 이때도. 어떻게 보면 웃기죠. 좀 도끼인 객긴이죠, 사실은. In this scenario, Gatsby is again an enigma. 알 수 없는. Though he lives in a garishly ostentatious West Egg mansion, East Eggers freely attend his parties. 이것도 좀 웃기죠. 이스트 에그 사람들이 왜 웨스트 에그 여기에 왜 놀러 오는 게요? 살짝 무시하면서. Despite the tensions between the two groups, the blend of East and West Egg creates a distinctly American mood. 어떤 mood? While the Americans at the party possess a rough vitality, the Englishmen there are set off dramatically. 정말 이 영국 애들은 여기 왜 나타나는 건지 아직 모르겠어. 나중에 이게 설명이 될래나? Seeming desperate and predatory, hoping to make connections that will make them rich. 아하. 이렇게 껴들어와서 어떻게 좀 잘해보려고 영국 애들이. 그럼 영국 애들 살짝 무시하는 그런 건가? 모르겠어. Fitzgerald has delayed the introduction of the novel's most important figure, Gatsby himself, until the beginning of chapter 3. 드디어 나타내셨죠. The reader has seen Gatsby from a distance. 그러니까 챕터 1에서도 보이죠. Heard other characters talk about him. 챕터 2에서 이렇게 조던 베이커가 얘기하는 거. And listen to Nick's thoughts about him. But has not actually met him, nor has Nick. Chapter 3 is devoted to the introduction of Gatsby and the lavish, showy world he inhabits. Fitzgerald gives Gatsby a suitably grand entrance. 정말 뽀대 있게 탁 등장시키죠. As the unloved host of a spectacularly decadent party. Despite this introduction, this chapter continues to heighten the sense of mystery and enigma that surrounds Gatsby. 아직도 모르겠죠? As the low profile he maintains seems curiously out of place with his lavish expenditures. Just as he stood alone on his lawn in chapter 1, he now stands outside the throng of pleasure seekers. 그죠? 항상 거리를 좀 두고 있죠, 사람들하고. In his first direct contact with Gatsby, Nick noticed his extraordinary smile. One of those rare smiles with the quality of eternal reassurance in it. 어떤 확신을 주는. Nick's impression of Gatsby emphasized his optimism and vitality. Something about him seems remarkably hopeful, and this belief in the brilliance of the future impresses Nick even before he knows what future Gatsby envisions. 그죠? 아무것도 모르면서도. Many aspects of Gatsby's world are intriguing because they are slightly amiss. 뭔가가 좀 안 맞는. For instance, he seems to throw parties at which he knows none of the guests. 그죠? 이거 이해가 안 되죠? 어떻게 보면. 아니, 왜 이렇게 쓸데없는 좀 무식하게 표현하면 쓸데없는 돈지랄하는 거죠. 아무런 상관도 없는 사람들한테. His accent seems affected, and his habit of calling people old spot is hard to place. 도대체 이게 accent도 affected, 뭔가 좀 그런 채 하는 것 같고 사람들을 old spot 이렇게 부르는 게 그것도 좀 흔하게 쓰는 표현은 아니니까. One of his guests, All Eyes, is surprised to find that his books are rare and not just empty covers designed to create the appearance of great library. 이런 게 있었나 봐요. 그러니까 책 껍데기만 이렇게 있고 속은 아무것도 없는 정말 장식용 이런 게 있었나 봐요. 굉장히 미국적인 아이디어죠. The tone of Nick's narration suggests that many of the inhabitants of East Egg and West Egg use an outward show of opulence to cover up their inner corruption and moral decay. 아직은 이게 그렇게 노골화되지는 않죠, 아직은. 하여간 슬쩍슬쩍 보이긴 하죠. But Gatsby seems to use his opulence to mask something entirely different and perhaps more profound. 뭘까? From this chapter forward, the mystery of J. Gatsby becomes the motivating question of the book. And the unraveling of Gatsby's character becomes one of its central mechanisms. 그래서 하나씩 밝혀지긴 하는데 그렇다고 뭐 끝까지 뭐 완벽하게 보여진다라고 말하기도 좀 애매하지 않나? One early clue to Gatsby's character in this chapter is his mysterious conversation with Jordan Baker. 근데 모르잖아. conversation의 내용은. Though Nick doesn't know what Gatsby says to her, the fact that Jordan now knows something remarkable about Gatsby means that a part of the solution to the enigma of Gatsby is now loose among Nick's circle of acquaintances. 이제는 조금은 아는 거죠. 조던 베이커는. 그러니까 조금 언젠간 알게 되겠죠. Chapter 3 also focuses on the gap between perception and reality. At the party, as you look through Gatsby's books, our eyes states that Gatsby has captured the effect of theater. 뭐? A kind of mingling of honesty and dishonesty that characterizes Gatsby's approach to this dimension of his life. 이렇게까지 되나? The party itself is a kind of elaborate theatrical presentation, and our eyes suggest that Gatsby's whole life is merely a show, believing that even his books might not be rare. The novel's title itself, The Great Gatsby, is suggestive of the sort of vaudeville billing for performer musician like the great Houdini. Subtly emphasizing the theatrical and perhaps illusory quality of Gatsby's life. 그러니까 이렇게 바라볼 수도 있는 거죠. Great Gatsby라는 말 자체가 그 어떤 그 보드빌 그 유랑극단에서 그 한국식으로 말하면 방금 동남아시아 순회 공연을 마치고 온 그 위대한 가수 누구입니다. 뭐 이런 식으로 이렇게 소개하는 것처럼 그 유명한 개츠비입니다. 뭐 이렇게 하는 그런 식이 아닐까라고 이렇게 얘기하는 거죠. Nick's description of his life in New York likewise calls attention to the difference between substance and appearance. 그러니까 내용과 겉모양, as it emphasizes both the colorful allure of the city and its dangerous lack of balance. 화려해 보이지만 뭔가가 좀 안 맞는. It says that the city has an adventurous feel, but it also calls it racy, a word with negative moral connotation. 그 너무 좀 뭐라 그래야 되나? 레이스라는 게 그 경주 말하는 거잖아요. 경주. 레이스가 여기서는 그 종족 이런 뜻이 아니라 그 경쟁적으로 뛰는 경주 말적인 어드벤처러스한 느낌은 있는데 너무 사람들이 뭔가 쫓기듯이 달려가는 너무 경쟁적인 이런. Nick feels similarly conflicted about Jordan. He realized that she is dishonest, selfish, and cynical, but he is attracted to her vitality nevertheless. 그러니까 여기서는 그 뭐라 그러나? 어떤 그 육체적인 끌림? 이런 것들을 그냥 대놓고 그렇게 표현하지는 않지만 이렇게 바이탈리티 이런 식으로 표현하죠. 육체적인 끌림이라고 그냥 얘기하면 될 것 같기도 한데, 그죠? Their budding relationship emphasizes the extent to which Nick becomes acclimated to the life of the East. 점점 acclimated, 그 익숙해져 가는 거죠. 그 동부의 그 사람들 사는 모습에. Abandoning his Midwestern values and concerns in order to take advantage of the excitement of his new surroundings. 조금은 고루한 중부의 그런 분위기를 좀 자기가 갖고 있던 걸 좀 버리면서 예 그런 식으로 어널리시스를 스파크 노트에서는 하고 있고요. 클리프 노트가 이 오빠가 조금 다르죠 좀. 서머리한 거 봅시다 다시. Nick's attentions again turned to Gatsby in chapter 3. Gatsby in the summer month was known far and wide for the extravagant parties he threw, in which men and girls came and went like moths among the whisperings and champagne and stars. During the weekend, people flocked to his house. 주말이라고 나와 있나 보다. 우린 전 걸 놓쳤네요. For his parties, as well as to use his pool, his boat, his car, and so on. 풀이라고 나와 있나? 비치라고 나와 있나? 비치라고 나와 있던 것 같은데. 풀이라고 그랬나? 기억이 안 나냐? His gatherings were lavishly catered, serving to complete dinners. 그죠? 저녁 주고 12시 넘어서 또 주고. Boasting not just a small combo of musicians, but a whole orchestra. 이것도 그 책 하면서 설명했죠. 오케스트라가 우리가 아는 그 심포닉 오케스트라가 아니라 그 빅밴드 정도, 재즈 빅밴드 정도인 것 같아요. 제가 보기엔. The guests enjoyed themselves flirting and dancing until the wee hours of the morning. 아침까지. After seeing these parties from afar, Nick is invited by Gatsby by a handwritten note to join in the festivities. handwritten인가? 그냥 그 사인이 돼 있었다고 하지 않았나? 이것도 Nick is one of the few to have actually been invited. The others simply arrive knowing only that there will be a party and they won't be turned away. At the party, Nick tries to find Gatsby, but has no luck. No one tells him where Gatsby is, suggesting that they themselves didn't know the host. And Nick mills around the party, 돌아다니고, he encounters Jordan Baker, and the two of them to mingle around. to가 아니라 이투가 아니라 이투죠. to mingle around. Inadvertently gathering rumors about Gatsby, 이런저런 얘기, including that he had once killed a man. After several glasses of champagne, Nick begins a conversation with a fellow who is, unbeknownst to him, Gatsby himself. 바로 Gatsby. Later, Gatsby takes Jordan Baker aside to speak with her privately. 좀 지나서 나중에 부르죠. What they discuss is not revealed, but Jordan passes along that it's the most amazing thing. Not wanting the reader to think his summer was composed merely of the three events outlined in the book's first three chapters, Nick interjects that much more happened to him. 그러면서 자기 일상생활을 보여주죠. Although it largely entailed working, dating casually, and dining at the Yale Club. His affinity for New York has been growing throughout the summer as he begins to appreciate its enchanted metropolitan twilight and how everyone hurried toward gaiety, 즐거움. Nick meets up with Jordan Baker in midsummer, and as the two begin to see more of each other, Nick begins to look upon her with a sort of tender curiosity. 관심을 갖게 되죠. He realized, though, that Jordan is incurably dishonest. In fact, the reason Nick remembered her name initially is that she had once been accused of cheating in a golf tournament. 조금 자세하게 서머리를 넣어놨네, 여기단. Despite Jordan's downfalls, demerit이죠, demerit. 약점들. She intrigues Nick, although he ends the chapter by touting his own cardinal virtue, claiming modestly, I'm one of the few honest people that I have ever known. 자기 빼곤 다 사람들이 정직하지 않은 것 같다. 이게 끝까지 유지될까? 그랬던 것 같기도 하고요. 이렇게 여기까지가 서머리고요. 그 다음에 저번 시간에 우리가 좀 당황했던 어널리시스 한번 봅시다. Chapter 3 is in many ways like Chapter 2, moving from one party to another, encouraging the juxtaposition of two events. 이렇게 대척점에 놓는 거. Tom's party and Gatsby's party are quite different. Tom's party는 몇 명 모여놓고 이렇게 술 먹는 거고요. Gatsby는 엄청난 큰 규모고. Although in some ways alike, 둘 다 그닥 도덕적으로 그렇진 않지만 전혀 좀 다르죠. Encouraging the reader to explore in what ways the two men are also similar. 이렇게 볼 수도 있구나. The purpose of chapter 3 is also like chapter 2 to provide essential background, although this time it is Gatsby who is introduced. By inserting the chapter about Tom, Fitzgerald has effectively held off, introducing the story's main character, helping to build an air of mystery around him, not unlike the mystery that Nick and the others initially associate with him, and by keeping the reader from meeting Gatsby. 좀 밀어놓은 거죠. 주인공 나타나는 걸. Fitzgerald links the reader even more closely to Nick. 그러니까 결국은 닉이 바라보는 시점에서 결국 모든 걸 보게 되니까 닉의 입장이 점점 되게 하는 거죠, 리더들로 하여금. However, the information is sketchy. Later chapters help to round out the picture of him. 결국은 그 전체를 보게 되죠. Who he is and where he comes from. Nick tells of Gatsby's parties, elaborate and grand affairs that attract entertainers, socialites, 그러니까 그 파티 좋아하는 사람들을 그냥 socialite라고 하는 것 같아요. Party goers and even other people. Gatsby is a perfect host, generous and hospitable. In fact, he is courteous to the point of being taken advantage of it. Taken advantage of. 이용당할 정도로. 그죠? 우리로 따지면 봉이 되는 거죠. 아, 이런 표현도 참 연식이 드러나는 표현이다. People routinely come to his house for the parties, but also to use his boat, his plane, his cars, and so on. 아, 이거 제가 잘못했던 것 같아요. 그러니까 그 아쿠아플레인 혹은 그 이런 표현도 썼죠. 뭐 하이드로플레인 뭐 이렇게 하는데 전 이게 그 진짜 그 에어플레인 뭐 이런 종류인 줄 알았는데 그거 아니래요. 그거 보니까 이게 우리는 그 워더보드라 그러죠. 맞나? 그 여기도 표현이 나오잖아요. 보트가 끈다고 나오잖아요. 보트가 끄는 거니까 그 뭡니까? 우리 말하는 그 수상 스키 탄다 그러잖아요. 워터 스키? 맞나? 워터 스키 혹은 워터보드 이렇게 표현하나? 이런 거예요. 그거예요, 그거. 수상 스키 타는 거. 그거를 이렇게 플레인이라고 표현한 겁니다. 아쿠아플레인, 하이드플레인. His cars and so on. Gatsby must not mind all his guests, however, because every weekend continues in the same patterns of excess and opulence as it provides his guests with only the finest food, drink, and entertainment. 도대체 왜 이걸 하는지는 나중에 밝혀지는지 모르겠다. Nick, living next door to Gatsby, has been observing the parties at a distance as a casual observer, but in chapter 3, he is officially invited to attend one. As he moves from being a spectator to being a participant, Nick is able to provide an informed view of not only what goes on at Gatsby's parties, but also what the partygoers themselves are like. 파티는 어떤지, 그리고 partygoers 여기 나오네요. socialites죠. 앞에서 제가 얘기했던 그 사람들은 어떻게 노는지. When Nick reveals that he is one of the few invited guests at the party, this little detail tells quite a lot. It signals that in some yet unexplained way, Nick is set apart from the typical party guest. 그죠? 이 사람은 정식으로 그 초청받은 사람이니까 드물게. Despite living next door to Gatsby, he has never succumbed to the urge to crash one of the parties. 그죠? 그냥 그 초청 안 받아도 갈만 하잖아요. 보니까 아무나 다 들어가는 것 같으면. 근데 그렇게 안 하죠, 이 사람은. 아, 맞다. 이런 면에서 또 이 사람의 닉의 그 캐릭터를 보여주는구나. Which would have been easy enough to do, given the way in newspaper come and go from Gatsby's affairs. Perhaps it is Nick's Midwestern roots and their implied propriety that keep him at a distance. 그렇죠. 이게 어떻게 보면 좀 전통적인 미국의 이 범절이죠, 사실은. But regardless, his sense of decorum shows brightly throughout this scene, helping readers see him as character with integrity. 그죠? 그 일관성이 있는 캐릭터. 인테그리티가 그런 뜻이죠. 일관성이 있는. Having Nick at Gatsby's party provides an unprecedented chance to peer into the lives of the seemingly well-to-do people who attend. The impression is not very appealing. 뭐 별로 좋아 보이지 않는 거죠, 뭐. It turns out that the glamorous and great party guests are in fact quite shallow. 굉장히 좀 얄팍한, 천박한, 얕은. Nick says that they conducted themselves according to the rules of behavior associated with amusement park. 그냥 즐거움만을 찾는 그런 사람들. Again, stressing the carefree, stereotypical roaring 20s atmosphere. 야, 여기도 이 표현 나오는구나. roaring 20s. Much to the partygoers' discredit, however, sometimes they came and went without having met Gatsby at all. 신경도 안 쓰는 거죠, 뭐. Gatsby 뭐 만나든 안 만나든. In stark contrast, Nick, as soon as he arrived, made an attempt to find his host. 그죠? 용모가 있는 거죠, 이 사람은. 어떻게 보면 좀 답답한 사람이죠. He had little luck, however, because no one could help him. In fact, when Nick asked people for help in Find Gatsby, they can only look at him in such an amazed way. 오, 외쳐져, 이런 표현. And vehemently deny any knowledge of his movement. Again, setting a stark contrast between himself and the people he tells us about. 아, 이 오빠가 스파크노트보다 더 꼼꼼하게 분석하네요. 장점이 있네, 이 오빠가. The only person Nick encounters at the party whom he knows is Jordan Bacon. The mere fact that Jordan is at the party suggests that she is in some ways that are explored later in this chapter and beyond, an extension of the party going set. Although little is known of her up to this point, her presence at the mansion suggests that she likely runs with the sort of people who frequent Gatsby's house. 그러니까 이런 사람들하고 뭐 비슷한 사람이라는 그런 게 좀 깔려 있죠. 조던 베이커도 결국은 그런 사람일 것이다. She seems intrigued by Nick. However, just as he is intrigued by her, for reasons that remain unstated. 뭐 육체적인 끌림이라고 제가 앞에서 얘기했었죠. 그런 거 아닐까요? Perhaps she finds Nick a welcome relief to the kinds of men she generally meets. Or perhaps she is drawn to his Midwestern sensibility. 아, 이런 측면? For it is clear he doesn't yet blend in with the East Coast crowd. 아직은 덜 때가 묻었죠. Whatever it is that draws her to him, she has never before been involved with anyone quite like Nick. This is especially brought out in chapter 8 and 9. 그런가? 아, 조던 베이커가 끝까지 역할을 하든가. 나 왜 기억이 안 나냐. While Nick and Jordan mingle at Gatsby's party, they learn many intriguing things about their host, and everything they learn underscores the idea of reality versus rumor that underlies so much of The Great Gatsby. One of the first things the couple find out is that when a party girl tore a dress at a party, Gatsby sent her a new evening gown worth a small fortune. Nick and Jordan also discovered that part of the Gatsby mythos is that myth이죠, myth. myth를 그냥 mythos라고 표현을 하네요. Is that he killed a man once. Another romantic rumor places Gatsby as a German spy during the war. How interesting that no one really knows much about Gatsby. In a way, it is a sad commentary on the people attending the party. Can they really care so little about their host that they don't even have the common courtesy to find the difference between fiction and fact? 신경 안 쓰지 뭐. Instead, they believe what is convenient or easy for them, creating a version of Jay Gatsby that meets their ideas. 지들 멋대로 그냥 믿는 거죠. 믿고 싶은 대로. Ironically, the gas construction of their host is not unlike how the host himself, as is later revealed, has constructed himself. 그런가? 자기 스스로를 개츠비가 그런 식으로 생각을 했나? As Nick and Jordan saunter around, they also shed more light on the party goals themselves. For example, while Nick and Jordan explore the house under the pretense at least of looking for Gatsby, they meet a man known throughout the book as Our Eyes due to his glasses. Two things are striking about him. First, he seems impressed that the books in Gatsby's library are rare. 첫 번째 그거. Although this may seem merely a careless remark, in fact, it speaks volumes. Speaks volumes 그러면 꽤 큰 거를 의미한다 이런 뜻입니다. Gatsby, unlike Tom, is new money, and Our Eyes knows that. Clearly, he has spent a great deal of time among the nouveau riche. nouveau riche라는 게 new rich라는 뜻입니다. new money, new rich. And knows them well enough to know that they are by and large about appearances. 껍데기만 그렇다라는 걸 Our Eyes는 좀 아는 것 같아요. He is surprised that the books are rare, expecting instead for them to be a nice, durable cardboard. 그냥 딱딱한 카드보드 정도일 거라고 생각했는데 진짜 책이더라는 거죠. Giving the illusion of a library where none really exists. Instead, Gatsby does indeed have rare books. Everything in the house, Gatsby reveals later, has been painstakingly chosen to create an image of affluence. 맞긴 맞죠. 껍데기를 만들려고 했다는 의도는 같은데 과정이 조금 살짝 다르죠. 진짜 책을 신경 써서 모은 거하고 정말 아무 성의도 없이 그냥 가짜 책, 그냥 카드보드 갖다가 때려 껍데기만 갖다 놓은 거하고 좀 다르긴 하죠. 근데 결론은 그냥 겉모양을 보이려고 한 거는 같죠. The second revealing statement of Our Eyes makes is that he's been drunk for about a week now. In this respect, he is a perfect poster boy for the jazz age, drunk to the incapacitation for weeks on end. 그냥 술에 쩔어서 그냥 흥청망청 그냥 끝도 없이 지내는 거. 그때 재즈 에이지가 그랬대요. The carnivalesque atmosphere, 축제 같은 분위기 of Gatsby's party continues as the couple heads outdoors, still searching for their host. Nick offers a telling commentary on the way of life he's witnessing, stating that after he had enough champagne, the scene had changed before his eyes into something significant, elemental, and profound. 술 좀 먹고 보니까 세상이 좀 달라 보이는 거를 보여주면서 재즈 에이지 때 사람들이 왜 이렇게 술에 이렇게 취해서 쩔어서 이렇게 지냈는지를 살짝 맛을 보여주죠. Sober, this scene has no more significance than any other. 근데 술 깨고 나면 But through the haze of alcohol, it seems to become steeped in meaning. Again, Fitzgerald offers candid commentary into life in the jazz age. 그러니까 재즈 에이지 때 사람들이 뭔가에 좀 너무 취해 있었던 것 같다. 술뿐만이 아니라 사람들이 미국 사람들이 뭔가에 그냥 정신이 홀리는데 취해 있었던 거 아니냐. 뭔가를 잊어버리고 이런 얘기. He is in effect offering harsh social criticism by suggesting that the only way in which a sense of meaning is to be found in this time is through altering one's sense of consciousness. 제정신으로. Through the partying, people were able to bring meaning, regardless of the fact it may be false meaning, into their otherwise meaningless lives. For them, drinking was an escape, allowing them to exit the mundane world and take part in something bigger, something more meaningful. 그런 것 같지만 술 깨고 나면 아니죠. The first glimpse of Gatsby reveals a man 어떤 사람? Who stands apart from the type of guest he routinely hosts at his parties. Much to Fitzgerald's credit, the reader, just like Nick, falls into the trap of interacting with Gatsby before his identity is ever revealed. 이 사람의 아이덴티티가 드러나기 전에 이미 뭔가 그 선입견을 갖게 되죠. 개츠비에 대해서. 아, 뭐 대단한 뭐 어쩌고 저쩌고 이런 거에 참 그런 면에서 피츠제럴드가 그 기적 같은 작품을 쓴 거예요. 사실은 이 그레이트 개츠비라는 이 소설이 정말 이것까지 다 계산이 된 것일까? 그런 생각이 좀 드는 거죠. Nick strikes up a conversation with someone of a bit more substance than the typical party guest. 좀 내용이 있는 그런 대화를 나누는 거죠. Someone who asks him questions about himself and is somewhat interested in him, albeit a general passing interest. In fact, Nick remarks that Gatsby possesses a quality of eternal reassurance that you may come across 4 or 5 times in life. 뭐 대단한 사람을 만난 것 같은 그런 느낌. 근데 그렇게 대단한 사람인가, 개츠비가? 그건 좀 아닌 것 같은데. His smile, Nick asserts, believed in you as you'd like to believe in yourself, and assured you that it had precisely the impression of you that at your best you hope to convey. The understanding projected through Gatsby's smile is not without its roots. 어디에 있는데? The instance in its past, especially those discussed in chapter 6. 응? 기억이 안 나. 뭔 얘기가 나오는지. Have led him to value a well-crafted appearance. 가봅시다. chapter 6까지. The image of Gatsby is one of extreme propriety. propriety는 그 propriety 단어 힘들면 그냥 proper 생각하시면 돼요. proper의 명사형이니까. 적정함, 뭐 이런 뜻이에요. 적정함. From the majestic hand that signed Nick's invitation to the full-size orchestra and exquisite catering, Gatsby appears the perfect gentleman. 뭐 그 모든 걸 이렇게 해놓으면 그 정도의 그 취향과 뭐 이런 재력만으로 되는 것도 아니지 않습니까? 또 그런 것들이 어떤 그 테이스트가 그런 게 있어야 뭘 좀 아는 사람이어야지 이런 걸 하잖아요. 거기서 자기를 드러내고 싶은 거는 이런 거죠. 나는 이 정도의 파티를 이렇게 할 정도면 단순한 그 월디맨이 아니라 퍼펙트 젠틀맨이다. 이런 걸 드러내고 싶었나? 하여간 뭐 당장의 효과는 그런 거죠. He's gracious and kind-hearted, or else how could he put up with his own guests? 그렇지. A combination that gives rise to rumors. 그죠? 일반인이면 이걸 이해를 못하니까. 도대체 왜 이러는지. 그러다 보니까 별의별 얘기가 다 나오는 거죠. He is, however, set apart from the guests, both mentally and physically. Nick indicates that during the course of the evening, as men and women began to move closer to each other in gestures of protection, Gatsby was strikingly marginalized. 빠져 있잖아요. No one sought to rest her head or his shoulder. No friend sought him out to join their small and intimate groups. 어느 그룹에도 안 껴있잖아. Gatsby, the host, remained strikingly aloof from his guests. Nick likely is one of the first people to ever realize this. Again, as a testament to his general nature, Nick comes off as a credible and trustworthy narrator. 믿을 만한 그런 너레이터로서 다시 또 자기가 등장을 하는 거죠. Just as one may think that Gatsby will have nothing to do with any woman. 딱 그럴 때 he sends for Jordan Baker, wishing to speak to her privately. 모든 것에 초연한 듯한 이 개츠비, 도대체 아쉬울 게 전혀 없는 이성에 대한 어떤 추구도 욕망도 없어 보이는 그런 사람이 베이커한테 딱 연락을 합니다. When Jordan returns, Fitzgerald, wanting to maintain suspense for a bit longer, withholds the purpose of their discussion. But Jordan says that it was the most amazing thing, which is finally discussed at the end of chapter 4. 이러면서 이제 chapter 4를 기대해 주세요. 이렇게 되는 거지. 재밌네. In addition to providing information about Gatsby, his parties and his podcast, chapter 3 also chronicles a return to the issue of morality and equity, introduced in chapter 1. Toward the chapter's end, Nick shifts his focus away from Gatsby and toward Jordan. Jordan 얘기를 좀 하죠. He reveals his interest in her, but tempers it by discussing her apparent penchant for lying. 거짓말하는 성향, 경향. 이게 그 균형을 이루면서 이렇게 접근을 합니다. While he is initially flattered to go places with her, largely because of her fame, he isn't actually in love, but feels a sort of tender curiosity. 적정한 선을 다 지키죠. Nick's opinion of Jordan changes, however, when he finds that she makes a habit of lying her way out of bad situation. 거짓말로 상황을 벗어나려고 하는 경향, 그런 습관, thus revealing to contrary facets of his nature. His nature가 아니라 her nature 아니야? Unlike many of the novel's characters who delight in basking in the fame and notoriety of others, take for instance Myrtle's delight at the power and prestige she gets from being with Tom, Nick's judgment is not entirely clouded by fame. 신기하죠? 어떤 면에선 다들 이렇게 미쳐 돌아가는데 닉만이 이렇게 멀쩡해 보이죠. Even though Nick is fond of Jordan, he's still able to discern her lack of honesty. However, as admirable as that is, Nick contradicts this good judgment when he confesses that dishonesty in a woman is a thing you never blame deeply. 맞다. 이 문장이 있었구나. I was casually sorry and then I forgot. 여자는 조금 dishonest 해도 돼. 이게 또 뭔 말이야? 이게 이 작품의 묘미입니다. 사실은. Clearly, although it wouldn't admit it, it does hold a double standard, excusing Jordan's shortcomings because of her gender. 여자니까. As the chapter ends, Nick reveals his own sense of self-worth. Of all the people he has known, he is one of the few who is honest. 자기만. In many respects, this is true, and as the story continues, Nick's moral fortitude, 강인함, becomes more and more pronounced. But the mere fact that he has dismissed Jordan's dishonesty makes the reader wonder, 왜? At least momentarily, whether this is true. 왜? 이게 끝까지 가죠, 사실은. 사실은 이게 어떻게 보면 이 책 전체의 어떤 주제하고도 연결이 되죠. 이게 이 오빠가 스파크노트보다 훨씬 깊이가 있죠. 분석하는 게. 점점 마음에 드는데? 나만 그런 거 아니지? 아닌가? 점점 신뢰가 가는데요. 오케이. 챕터 4에서 만납시다. 빠빠이.